Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. Josh isn't here today because he's still traveling, which is unfortunate because I think he would have really liked to be here on this show. We've talked about healthcare. We've talked about free markets, but what about healthcare and blockchain? What solutions can be offered? Today we have Chrissa McFarlane joining us from Patientory, and I'm really excited to get her perspective because she's been doing this for quite a while. So thank you so much, Chrissa, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Tatiana. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about your background. Did you start out in the healthcare industry, and what was it that attracted you to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies?
Absolutely. So I did start out in healthcare. Actually first started out in research. So I did research, microbiology research, had an interest in practicing medicine. But then, had my first job at a healthcare facility where I ran their community development program for their mental health. So that really got me interested in the business side of healthcare. So I ended up going to business school and then, ventured out into health IT consulting, which landed me in digital healthcare startup world, which is still a pretty, budding and new industry. And then just seeing the, inefficiencies in the industry led me to research more on blockchain and, of course, cryptocurrencies, which sits on top of that tech, and it made sense. So that's essentially how Patientory got born.
Excellent. So what are some of the problems that you saw, and what are you trying to fix? Because there are a lot of different things. Are you trying to fix access, or is it data management? Tell us a little bit more about what you guys are trying to do, or what you guys have been doing, I guess.
Yeah. So, when we set out to start the company, it was really looking at, we were really surprised at just the numbers in chronic disease ailments in the US. To look at it, like over 150 million American adults have one or more chronic illnesses, and that's a large number. So looking at that, we were like, okay, well, we have this healthcare system, which is supposed to be one of the best in the world. Why do we have so many sick people? And then, the fact that we start to digitize information, but no one can actually access it, was just one of the red flags, and the biggest issue that has been in the health IT space for like over a decade. So we are focused on, access to care, which then equates into data management of that health information.
So what has been the biggest challenge for getting that adopted? Because with all that infrastructure, there's a lot of bureaucracy. How do you even start to get in there with that kind of a overhaul?
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, healthcare is one of the least innovative industries, right? And if anything new comes about, it takes about a decade for that to be even implemented. If you look at it, healthcare is still using fax machines from the 80s. So the fact that we're introducing this new technology, is a challenge in itself. But we have seen with recent current events, such as pandemic, initiatives for a lot of these large corporations to start to get buy-in, build consortia around POCs, which is just the first step.
Do you think that there have been any big wins that you guys have been really proud of? Because you've had quite the history. You guys raised a lot in the beginning. What was that like? It's kind of a lot of pressure when you raise a lot of money in the beginning of a company, and this is such a new industry. Maybe are there any kind of challenges that could be useful for other people to learn from your experience?
Yeah, I would say healthcare, it seems as if we raise a lot, definitely for consumer, but for healthcare, it wasn't that much. But it definitely gave us some traction to start to, have these conversations and educate the industry, especially being one of the first to actually bring the technology to the table. So with that, we built up an association which focuses on bridging the gap between new emerging technologies in the healthcare space and the overall industry. That was one of the first challenges we faced. Like, we had this product, we were going to, we were selling it, but, the use of the technology was just something that was not, aware when we went in to talk with the C-suite. So, building up that association helped, where we can curate content around how the technology can be used in the space and the benefits of its use in the overall industry. And then we also host an annual conference through that association where we invite leading institutions such as Harvard Medical School, Mayo Clinic. We had the CIO for Mayo come in and start to talk about use cases where this would be applicable in their systems.
What about an international type of partnership? Is that even possible? And also I've heard of, ID 2020, which is something that's being implemented by a number of different companies. Is that something that you guys are associated with, or is digital identity something a little bit separate from this patient use case?
Digital identity definitely falls into that use case. And we've definitely had or participated in journal peer review articles that, look at the benefits of that in health IT setting when it comes to management of patient identification and their data. So we're part of a work group on that under HIMSS and IEEE. And then internationally, so the association is global. So we do currently have ambassadors in about 8 different countries to date, that are more or less spearheading a lot of the adoption and content.
How do you deal with the privacy issues? And what kind of blockchain are you using? Is that really necessary in order to protect the identities of people?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, what blockchain you use is necessary. So we're actually a modified version of Ethereum. We are GDPR compliant. And as you know, HIPAA is one of the most stringent regulations and policies out there for, private and protected health data on patients, which we do comply with as well. So the P2A matrix, which is the health information exchange network that we've built, uses cryptography and different cybersecurity mechanisms to be able to achieve that.
Tell me a little bit about how you can remain in compliance, because that seems to be really difficult for a lot of, blockchain projects, but this specifically, what has been a solution? Have you guys joined any kind of organizations? Is there any kind of method to really get it past, or do you not find that there's a regulatory challenge because people are welcoming of that innovation?
Oh, there's absolutely a regulatory challenge. I mean, speaking for the healthcare industry, we have organizations such as HIMSS, which is a global health IT organization that our association is a nonprofit member of. And then, policies such as HIPAA, that's administered through the federal government. So there's like a checkbox of over 25 things that your software should be able, or platform should be able to do. And any cybersecurity firm or that focuses on that should be able to monitor that and give you a stamp of approval. In terms of the blockchain industry overall, we've seen projects that are looking to store data on the blockchain, which we do not do. So looking at health data and privacy, we don't store any of our data on the blockchain, which can be a hindrance for a lot of the privacy regulations.
What would you say is the market opportunity there? overall in blockchain health? I mean, it seems like it would be quite sizable numbers. Where do you think is a good target for people to be able to make the most inroads, and what does that look like?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just a part of a discussion earlier this week where, a very notable healthcare entrepreneur mentioned that, while healthcare is $1 trillion, business opportunity, it's made up of different billion-dollar markets. And blockchain and healthcare follows the same suit. So while, there may be this big opportunity when we look at data management for blockchain and healthcare, there are also different markets that may pertain to. So looking at it from a supply chain management system, which is currently being implemented by a lot of the large pharma corporations, that's a whole opportunity market in itself. And then we can also split it up into digital health and therapeutics, which, telemedicine initiatives, population health management can fall into that as well. And then another aspect of that would be, drug and clinical trial management. So when we think about blockchain and healthcare, it's looking at it from this big umbrella, but then looking at how companies can innovate within these different use cases.
Great. So let me ask you, is it possible to change the healthcare industry from the perspective of all of the research and all the hospitals and all that is basically funded by the pharmaceutical company? 150 million people, as you said, have these chronic healthcare problems. How do you reinsert personal responsibility into that? And do you think that there's a role for that on the business side, or is that just something that people need to be personally responsible for? One could say, people are getting sick from COVID, but if they maintained better health, their chances would be that they would be more likely to survive and be okay. So I feel like that's a missing part of the conversation right now. Do you think that there's an opportunity for the healthcare industry to retake that leadership role there, because they're completely funded by big pharma?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say they're completely funded by big pharma.
Okay, somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat funded by big pharma. But again, it's this notion which has been missing and extracted from the conversation, and it's the idea of patient empowerment, which in terms of the Patientory Inc. software use case, that's where we're focused on how we're positioned in blockchain to help with that. So looking at it from, as we move to a more value-based pricing and reimbursement model that these pharma companies are looking now to reimburse hospital systems, how healthy are your patient populations becoming, that ownership and empowerment of the actual individual to actually want to be healthy can help to transform that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I had another question. You have actually taken a bit of a leadership role in the cryptocurrency community, especially for people of color, for women specifically, I think. Tell me a little bit more about why that's been an important thing for you to bring to the table.
Absolutely. I think when we look at the evolutions of new technology emergence, such as, the introduction of the internet, www.com bubble back, 20 years ago, the concept of, minority and POC, people of color, was actually not present. And then we have this initiative in terms of AI, seeing it being developed and not actually helping or catering to diverse communities is something, that I'm interested in bringing awareness to in the space, but also attracting more diverse groups and minorities to be a part of the conversation, because this is the future of tech and how we will be doing business.
Why would you say that they're not a part of that conversation, and what could be done in order to include people? Is there an interest there? Where would you say is the disconnect? from people being able to get into these fields?
Yeah, I would say the root cause, and I mentioned this earlier in a tweet I had over the weekend, is the lack of representation from minority groups in the tech industry overall. So whether or not, being founders and actual developers of companies and new technologies, or in university, diverse groups that study computer science and actually go on to work in the field. So I think the pipeline issue, the numbers, you know, are are not well represented, which can be improved over time. Again, to get that diversity in thought and overall representation um, from these groups.
Have you had any good experiences mentoring any young entrepreneurs? Have you seen it sort of in action, sort of your example being inspirational to other people?
Yes, indirectly, directly for sure. I am part of a women's group in Atlanta that focuses on minority female founders who are building companies. So whether I go to present, they come to me and share their experiences, and vice versa. I've seen that has been inspirational and instrumental there. Or whether, I recently published a book last December, Future Women, which talks about more or less my experiences, building a company as a minority woman in the space. I've gotten feedback from readers. It was like, oh, I loved it. It really helped me put into perspective, how I can go out and start my own thing. So that has helped as well.
Okay, so what would you say if people encounter sexism or racism as an entrepreneur or somebody in the business place? Do you have any kind of recommendation for them how they could handle it? Do you think that there's any room for um, misunderstandings there? What would you say, in your experience, would be a good way for people to address those kinds of issues that come up sometimes? Or is it something that you just ignore and you say, whatever, this person's stupid?
Oh no, I would definitely not ignore that. When I tell founders to always, the one of the biggest important things as a founders is to be, to have support, whether that's through building an advisory board or being part of organizations that may stem from accelerators to just groups, like YPO, Young Professionals Organizations that are, interested in facilitating community and building up business leaders and, being able to voice, those experiences there um, before if it's as bad as, I need to file a lawsuit, then, do that. But at least, you can fall back in a community, which also helps with mental health. I mean, building a company is not easy, and a lot of founders are susceptible to just burnout. So you want to be able to pace yourself, but also align yourself with a community where you are trusted, you can feel trust, and be able to share those experiences.
What's your best advice for a young entrepreneur today that's going into the blockchain field? More broadly, just for anybody, what are some of your top tips and things that you've learned that could maybe be useful for somebody else?
Yeah, I would say, it's still early days. I haven't really seen a blockchain company that has done a public offering, right? So I would say, don't go into thinking that, you're going to change, the world overnight, but again, be able to pace yourself, create a roadmap, and again, align yourself with the right investors, the right advisors, to be able to help pour into you long term for success.
Where would you say are the best educational resources for people that want to get involved in this space, and specifically even on the investing side? Because there is a little bit of danger involved, right? And you must proceed at your own risk. But do you have any kind of winning crypto projects or vetting teams, or maybe a news outlet source that you think only has the best projects in the world besides yours, what would you say would be something that you're kind of excited about and maybe could be useful for other people?
Yeah, so I'm not doing this because I write. I'm a contributor for Forbes, but I think, that publication has taken a great initiative and stance in really highlighting enterprises and the adoption that the industry is seeing. So like late 2018, we started to see more of a push for, enterprises to gain traction in the blockchain space. They do the blockchain 50, which are companies that are doing successful POCs and pilots in the space. So look into, that would be my source for credible information. Again, try to, put out a plan, a long-term plan. If you're an entrepreneur or founder who is starting a new business, and don't be distracted too much by the noise. I know recent news, we're seeing a lot of these big companies, who did token sales, back in the day. Now they're being reprimanded by SEC, and it's a, promising initiatives that we thought were going to be successful. So I would say definitely, if you have a good team, good advisors, and you have utility and usage for your business, you should be good.
Absolutely. Any final words for our audience before we sign off? This has been really good, but I feel like we covered all the meaty stuff. I want to leave them wanting more, but maybe there's something you want to offer them as a dessert.
A dessert. Well, you can follow our company, our updates. We have our, again, global association, which partners with Smart Dubai, which is one of the leading governments, who has their blockchain 2021 strategy. And we co-partner with the Future Blockchain Summit. So if you're interested in learning more and content, meeting with innovators across the world who are developing that space, feel free to follow us there and learn more about our company updates at Patientory.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chrissa, for joining me today, and the rest of our audience as well. I hope I get to have a coffee with you at a conference in person one of these days soon. When all this is over, it'll be great to get together.
No social distancing.
Perfect. Okay, take care. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to the Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, The ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show.